This is the story of Suhu Kim, who suddenly reincarnates into the worst character of a novel. But with his system, he begins to change this world. Alongside his cute little pets, he rises to become the most powerful person in that world. The main character's name is Kim Suho, known in this world as Lord Frendra. An ordinary civil engineer is about to reshape the entire world, and he has only one goal: how to turn all this land into money. So, at the beginning of the story, one night in a medieval town, a strange message appeared in front of Lloyd. It said he was chosen and could make a wish. Another message congratulated him. Lloyd was lying on the ground and staring at the message with an unhappy face. The system told him that he had become a character inside a novel called Knight of Iron and Blood. He remembered this story because he read it just yesterday. But Lloyd was confused. He did not understand what wish they were talking about or what he was supposed to do next. Then a strange idea came to his mind. He thought that maybe he had been sent into another world, just like in many web novels. The man realized that he was lying on a road that leads to a city. He did not know why he woke up there. He quickly stood up and felt cold because of the night air. When he touched his face, he noticed something strange. His mouth looked small and bent in a funny way. Suddenly, a red system message appeared. It said that his mouth became crooked because he slept on the road. Feeling annoyed, he waved his hand at the message and fixed his mouth. Then he spoke to himself and said that he really had entered the body of a novel character. Now he wanted to know who he became in this story. While thinking, someone called out, "Mr. Lloyd." He turned around slowly. A strange man was walking toward him. The man had silver hair that shined like moonlight. A golden sword handle could be seen near his waist. He wore blue clothes and looked calm and serious. The man told him that he had been searching for him for a long time and asked him to return to the mansion. This person was Xavier, the main character of the novel. When Lloyd realized this, cold sweat ran down his face. He remembered Xavier clearly from the story. In the future, Xavier would become a famous sword master known across the continent. But right now, he was only a knight serving a noble family. Suddenly, Lloyd understood the truth. He realized that he had become Lloyd Fronta, the troublemaker character from the novel. He shouted in shock inside his head. Xavier looked at him calmly and said that he only called him by his name, not a troublemaker. Then Xavier smiled slightly and said that Lloyd judged himself correctly. Soon, they arrived at a large two-story mansion. Inside, Xavier added wood to the fireplace to make the room warm. Lloyd sat on a chair wrapped in a blanket. Xavier then explained what happened earlier. He said that Lloyd had been drinking since dinner time. He broke dishes in the tavern, became emotional, and then fell asleep on the road while returning home. Hearing this, Lloyd thought to himself that this kind of behavior matched the reputation of the prankster Lloyd. Xavier continued talking and said that the Baron was worried about his son. That was why he sent Xavier to find Lloyd. He added that even if Lloyd caused trouble, it would still be sad if the Baron's son died alone on the street. Lloyd noticed that Xavier spoke in a very calm and fearless way. Lloyd touched the floor and wished it was warm like modern heated floors. But then he remembered that this was a medieval fantasy world. Xavier turned around and told Lloyd to rest. He also said that tomorrow morning he would report everything to the Baron. Lloyd quickly asked him not to tell, but Xavier immediately refused. He was firm and would not change his decision. As Xavier opened the door to leave, Lloyd suddenly asked with a strange smile if their house had enough lights. Xavier closed his eyes in confusion, said nothing, and shut the door. Lloyd lay quietly and thought to himself that he already knew this story. In his real world, he had finished reading this novel on his phone just yesterday. He clearly remembered what would happen next. In the novel, the Baron and his wife were tricked by bad people. They lost all their money and later ended their own lives. After that, Lloyd became completely broken. He kept drinking, begging for alcohol, and finally died while coughing blood. Thinking about this future, Lloyd threw away the blanket and shouted in anger. He felt that even after becoming a noble, his life was still useless like before in Korea. He thought about the strange system message again and wondered why it brought him into this body. Morning arrived. The town near the mountains was bright under the sunlight. The white walls of the mansion shined beautifully. Xavier walked calmly behind a woman in a white dress. She was Lloyd's mother, Marbella Frenna. She was angry and talking about what Lloyd did in the tavern last night. Lloyd stood there with messy clothes and felt guilty. When his mother asked him to apologize, he did not wait and immediately agreed. He scratched the back of his head and accepted responsibility for what this body had done. Marbella and even Xavier opened their eyes wide in surprise. A system message appeared, showing their reaction. On the street, people were doing their daily work. One man was loading straw onto a cart. When he noticed Lloyd and Xavier walking toward him, he became scared and quickly hid behind the cart. Other people on the street also became nervous. They moved away and avoided looking at Lloyd. Lloyd felt more and more confused. A small child looked at Lloyd with curiosity. But someone quickly pulled the child inside the house and shut the window. Then a system message appeared again and told Lloyd that the villagers hated him. Lloyd calmly replied that he had already noticed that. Lloyd walked with his hands in his pockets and asked Xavier why he was following him everywhere. Xavier kept his hand on his sword and replied that the Baron ordered him to watch Lloyd and make sure he did not cause trouble again. Lloyd looked surprised and asked if he really needed to be guarded. Xavier calmly answered that it was not to protect Lloyd, but to protect the town people from him. Hearing this, Lloyd felt awkward and guilty. He looked around and realized that first he needed to fix his bad image. Otherwise, no one would even give him food if he ever needed help. Then he stopped himself and decided that solving his family's debt was more important. He started dreaming about living in luxury as the future owner of the land. Then he suddenly thought about game systems and asked in his mind if there were any special powers or cheats. Right away, a blue window appeared in front of him. Lloyd was shocked to see that this world really had skills. But when he checked his skill list, he became disappointed. The only skills shown were useless and drunkard. Angry and frustrated, Lloyd tried to hit the floating window. Xavier, who could not see it, looked at him with confusion and embarrassment. Lloyd continued walking forward. Xavier called him and asked where he was going. Lloyd turned around slowly and said nothing. There was a tavern beside them. Xavier stopped near the door and pointed at it. He asked Lloyd if his apology earlier was just a lie. Lloyd quickly tried to deny it. Xavier stayed silent for a moment. Finally, Xavier closed his eyes and told Lloyd to go inside. Lloyd slowly opened the door and looked into the tavern with an apologetic face. Xavier stood behind him and felt something strange. Since yesterday, Lloyd seemed like a completely different person. Inside the tavern, the place was badly damaged. Tables and chairs were broken. Cracks were on the walls, and decorations were damaged. Lloyd sat heavily on a chair and loudly announced that he came to apologize for his past actions. Xavier watched this scene in shock. The bald tavern owner took a fighting position, ready to defend himself. A system message appeared and showed this reaction. Lloyd looked at the owner and nervously asked him to calm down. He thought that maybe people were acting like this because they were not used to him speaking politely. So Lloyd quickly changed his attitude and asked for forgiveness in a rough and careless way. Right after that, another system message appeared and said that his behavior was inappropriate. The bald tavern owner was sweating. He bowed again and said in a shaky voice that everything was fine and that Lloyd did not need to apologize. Lloyd stayed silent and looked at him in surprise. Later, Lloyd and Xavier crossed a small bridge under the bright sky. Lloyd noticed that even after the apology, the tavern owner still looked unhappy. Xavier explained the reason. He said that all the broken plates and furniture were bought with hard-earned money. Because of that, only money compensation could truly solve the problem. Lloyd felt uncomfortable after hearing this. He knew that his family already had many debts. Paying compensation was not easy. At the same time, he understood that without solving the debt problem, he would never gain the trust of the people. Xavier added another sad detail. He said that the tavern owner's mother was also sick. Lloyd remembered how cold the tavern was and how weak the fireplace looked. While walking on the cold ground, Lloyd kept thinking about how difficult winter life must be for old people in this world. Suddenly, Lloyd stopped walking. Xavier went a few steps ahead. Lloyd stared into the air with wide eyes. Then, an idea suddenly hit him. It felt like a light turned on in his head. His mind became clear. He started imagining a heating system for floors. He realized that if he could create floor heating in this world, people would surely want to buy it. Lloyd remembered his past life. He was a civil engineer. He remembered working at construction sites, carrying heavy materials, and building structures day and night. He also remembered building things during his army service. He smiled and understood something important. Lloyd Fronta never had such dreams, but Kim Suho could do this. This was his chance. Lloyd became confident. He believed that this idea could help him pay off all the Barron family's debts. With new energy, Lloyd turned around and told Xavier to go back to the tavern. He loudly said that they were about to receive their first job. At that moment, a system message appeared. It says, "Your real journey begins now." A new system is activated. RP system. Relationship points. He can earn these points. Lloyd doesn't fully understand what RP means. So he looks at Xavier suspiciously. His impression score with Xavier is already very low. Still, Lloyd decides to try something. He looks at Xavier and says, "You're looking very handsome today." Xavier freezes. And just like that, his impression drops even further. Before things get worse, Lloyd decides to stop. They step outside again. Then Lloyd prepares a contract for the bar owner. "I'll build you a heating system," he says, "and I'll pay for all the damage I caused. Just sign here." But as expected, no one trusts a word he says. The bar owner even uses a mind wall skill to protect himself from possible manipulation. Now Lloyd has no other choice. So he switches tactics and starts intimidating him. Under pressure, the bar owner finally signs the contract. Lloyd smirks. No matter how dirty it was, he just secured his first deal. As they walk out, Xavier confronts him. "Why did you threaten him to sign? That's wrong." Lloyd looks at him calmly and replies, "Because of my past actions, everyone sees me as a thug. If I suddenly act honest, no one will believe me." Xavier is surprised. Since when did Lloyd start talking so logically? Then Lloyd says, "No matter what, I'll make that man and his mother happy. Because happiness is the real foundation of making money." Without wasting time, he picks up a shovel and starts digging the ground. Using scraps and materials from his house, he begins building the system. But his body isn't keeping up. He gets exhausted quickly. Xavier stops him. Because this is the first time he's seen Lloyd actually work. Every part of Lloyd's body aches. But he refuses to stop. He has to keep going. He tries cutting wood. As he lifts the axe, he almost collapses from exhaustion. But at the last moment, Xavier catches him. He takes the axe from Lloyd's hand, then tosses the logs into the air, and with a single skill, cuts every piece into perfect shape. It's flawless. Exactly what you'd expect from someone destined to become a great sword master. But instead of saying thank you, Lloyd looks at him and says, "Can you help me dig the ground too?" Xavier just stares at him, thinking, instead of thanking me, he's asking me to do more work. Well, that's exactly the kind of person Lloyd is. Still, Xavier is curious. What is he trying to build? That curiosity pulls him in, and he decides to help. The two of them begin digging rapidly. Finally, after a full week of hard work, the construction is complete. The room is finished. Lloyd quietly places his logo on the wall, with pride. In the end, this house is just a promotion. And when the bar owner and his mother step inside, they're stunned, warm, comfortable. For the first time, they can truly relax. The bar owner is deeply grateful. It feels almost like magic. He brought a smile back to his mother's face. Xavier watches all of this in disbelief. There's no doubt now. Lloyd is a completely different person. He can hardly believe this is real. And somehow, that makes him feel happy too. At that moment, Xavier's impression of Lloyd increases by 2 points. Lloyd now has 36 RP. And for the first time, he smiles. He spent a lot of money building this. But it doesn't matter. This house is just a promotion. However, even after the room's success, Lloyd struggles to convince others. He offers a 10% discount on construction, but the villagers are still afraid to trust him. At one point, he even tries to intimidate them into signing contracts. But suddenly, someone calls his name. It's his father, Arcus Frentra. His impression of Lloyd? -20. Back at the mansion, during dinner, his father asks, "What are you planning this time?" Lloyd replies calmly, "The bar owner gave me an order for a heating system, and I completed it." His father frowns. Don't lie to people who won't tolerate lies. Lloyd is about to leave, but his father stops him and says, "I know our family's situation, but don't worry. I'll handle everything." Those words, Lloyd has heard them before. In his past life. Back then, he believed everything would be fine. But now, he knows the truth. It was all a lie. So he walks away and quietly says, "Don't give up. I'm with you." As he walks forward, he runs into two men. One fat, one thin. Their names, Mythloaf and Shiloh. They pass by him, without even greeting him. A clear insult. But then Lloyd remembers. They're loan sharks. The two of them head straight into the Baron's office and begin speaking in a disrespectful tone. You have 5 days left to repay your debt. If you fail, we won't stay silent. Then Shiloh adds, why stay quiet? Why not just sell a few things from your mansion? Lloyd overhears everything, and in that moment, he realizes this might be his opportunity. Back in his room, he starts thinking. After increasing Xavier's impression, he had earned 36 RP points. But the question is, where should he use them? Just then, the system responds. You can use RP to upgrade your skills. A full body scan begins. As the system analyzes him, it searches for skills that match his needs, and also unlocks new ones. Then the system says, you have a brain. Lloyd frowns. Was that really necessary? I'm a scholarship student with good grades. Based on his existing knowledge, he unlocks 2 skills, basic measurement and basic design. Since he has enough RP, he acquires both. The first skill activates. Now he can take precise 3D measurements of anything. The second skill activates. With just his mind, he can create and visualize designs in the air. These abilities are exactly what he needs to build his future projects. Still, he thinks, it would be even better if I had knowledge to build large machines or the power to summon something powerful. Suddenly, the system replies, that is possible. A random draw option appears. Through it, he can summon fantasy species, but it requires RP points. And right now, he only has 1 point left. Lloyd smirks. If it's a fantasy species, it could work like a massive machine. Now his goal is clear. Collect as many RP points as possible, because only then can he summon something powerful. And to do that, he must improve his relationships. Meanwhile, Mythloaf is speaking to the Baron. If you don't have the money to repay your debt, I know a place where your wife and your maids can be sold for a good price. The Baron freezes. He says nothing. Shock. Humiliation. Then suddenly, Lloyd steps forward and places his hand on the Baron's shoulder. Calmly, he says, just because you're a creditor doesn't mean you can insult people. Mythloaf immediately steps back. Who do you think you are? Then he realizes. This is the Baron's troublemaker son. He smirks. When elders are speaking, children shouldn't interfere. But before he can finish, Lloyd cuts him off. Can you show me your invitation letter? Both of them pause. Confused. What is he trying to say? Lloyd steps forward and says, according to Article 3 of the Kingdom's Noble Law, every noble has the right to protect their interests and property within their territory. He continues, entering a noble's land without an invitation is considered trespassing. Hearing this, they scoff. What nonsense are you talking about? We've never heard of such a law. Lloyd calmly replies, all right then, let's verify it. He calls out, Xavier. Then he adds, coldly, cut off the hands of the trespassers. Mythloaf immediately reacts. Do you want to take this to court? Lloyd smirks. I told you we'll verify it together. Let's see whose side the court takes. Now clearly irritated, they back off and leave. But Lloyd's father is shaken. What you did, this won't calm things down. Lloyd places a bag of money on the table. This is the down payment for the heating system. It's not enough, but it'll keep things going for now. His father warns him, don't force money out of people. At that moment, Xavier steps in. Please don't worry. I've been keeping a close eye on Master Lloyd. Trusting Xavier's judgment, the Baron decides to observe for now. Later, as they walk outside, Xavier asks, how does someone like you know about laws like that? Lloyd replies casually, I already knew. I read it in the novel. He recalls, after the Baron and his wife died, those same 2 men tried to sell their bodies. That's when Xavier used that very law to defeat them. And when the case went to court, Xavier was declared innocent. Lloyd smiles to himself. Knowing the story really is an advantage. Then he pauses. Why hasn't the system said anything yet? As if responding, the system activates. The Baron's impression of you has increased by 6 points. Reward, 60 RP. This is exactly what Lloyd was waiting for. Now, he can finally summon a fantasy species. That night, Lloyd heads to a training ground near his house. He looks around. No one is there. Perfect. He activates the random draw. Suddenly, magic fills the air. Strange gates begin to appear. It looks incredible, but something feels off. The magic seems too small, and from within, a weird sound echoes. Then, something emerges. A tiny, adorable creature. Lloyd's face drops. He was expecting a massive beast, but instead, he got a hamster. This is a complete waste of RP, he mutters. A total failure. Hearing that, the hamster looks heartbroken. It tries to communicate, and somehow, Lloyd can understand it. The hamster insists. It has special abilities. So Lloyd tells it, "All right, show me." The hamster chews something and spits out a small piece of paper. Lloyd picks it up. It's a manual. It explains how to take care of the creature, along with a set of sunflower seeds. Red seeds. Make it grow larger for 12 hours. Blue seeds. Shrink it back to normal size. 2 seeds equals 1 RP. Lloyd decides to test it. He feeds it a red seed. If it grows to human size, it might actually be useful. But the moment it eats the seed, something insane happens. It starts growing and growing until Lloyd stumbles backward in shock. This thing isn't human-sized. It's over 10 meters tall. It's looking down at Lloyd, smiling arrogantly. Its name is Padong, and it has 3 abilities. Diggy, it can dig through the ground effortlessly. Ground Harmony, it can perfectly level the terrain. Pouch, it can chew and process anything, like gum. Lloyd stares at it. Seeing this, Lloyd feels relieved. Now his big machine problem is solved. But there's one issue. He can't let anyone see his pet. If people find out, they'll start suspecting him. So he comes up with a plan. I'll carry a sketchbook and tell everyone I'm a genius inventor. He grins. I'm way too smart for this world. But then, a new problem appears. How will he get workers? Lloyd calls the Baron's army. He announces, "From now on, whatever we do it with safety first." The soldiers look confused. They don't understand what he's talking about. Lloyd gets irritated. These people get paid for doing nothing. But now, he's going to use them. He gives them a strict order. Listen carefully. You are soldiers. You follow commands. Then he points at the soil. I dug all of this last night. With my own hands. Of course, Padong did it in just 30 minutes. Lloyd continues. We're going to improve this place. This is a heating room construction project. For now, move all this soil to the construction site. Hearing this, the soldiers' faces drop. Exactly as Lloyd expected. But just then, someone calls out to him. A man approaches. This is Frontier's senior knight, Newman. He looks at Lloyd and asks, "What are you doing with the Baron's army?" Lloyd had expected this. In this estate, there are 3 knights. First, Newman. Then, the Baron himself. And finally, the main character, Xavier. But Newman is not what he seems. When things start falling apart in the estate, he's the first to betray the Baron. Not only that, he sells the Baron's information to others. And he himself is drowning in debt. Lloyd thinks, how is this trash even a senior knight? Out loud, he says, "What do you think we're doing?" Newman frowns. "I can't believe you're making soldiers do such meaningless work. As a senior knight, I cannot allow this." Lloyd replies calmly, "I have the Baron's permission." Newman sneers. "I don't know how you fooled the Baron. But looking at you, it's obvious. You're using this army for your own benefit. Am I wrong?" Lloyd smiles. "You're absolutely right." Then his tone changes. "And now, you're about to get beaten." Hearing this, Newman grinds his teeth in anger. Suddenly, Lloyd scoops up dirt with his shovel and throws it straight at Newman's face. Everyone freezes. Even Newman can't believe what just happened. His anger explodes. Did you just try to insult a senior knight? But Lloyd ignores him, mocking him instead. He spins his shovel and points it forward. "Let's have a duel." For Newman, this is too much. He accepts, thinking, "You're going to regret this." Later, at the Baron's mansion, Xavier asks Lloyd, "You're going to duel Knight Newman in 1 month. Do you really think you can win?" Lloyd replies honestly, "What are you talking about? Of course I can't win." Then he says, "Teach me how to use a sword." Xavier immediately refuses. "Why?" Lloyd asks. Xavier explains, "My duty is to monitor you. And if someone like you learns swordsmanship, everyone around you would be in danger." Lloyd stares at him. "So you're not going to teach me, right? Teach me swordsmanship. And in return, I'll cure your insomnia." Xavier freezes. He's shocked, because he has never told anyone about this. But Lloyd already knows. He read it in the novel. He explains calmly, "You're transitioning from advanced sword level to sword master. Your senses are sharpening. That's why you can't sleep." After hearing this, Xavier accepts the deal, though he smirks, because he's certain Lloyd will fail. After all, he's tried everything to cure it, and nothing ever worked. But Lloyd doesn't hesitate. He starts talking, explaining random engineering concepts, nonstop, and slowly, Xavier falls asleep. Just like that. Now, it's Xavier's turn to teach. Lloyd is excited. The next morning, Xavier says, "Run 50 laps around the ground." Lloyd is shocked, but surprisingly, he starts running without complaining. Somehow, he manages to complete 1 lap. Breathing heavily, he says, "I hate this. Can't you just teach me some skills?" But he keeps running. Then he looks at Xavier and says, "You didn't expect this, right? You thought I'd yell at you by now, didn't you? Another lap. You were waiting for the moment. You'd say I don't have talent, and then ignore me, right?" Xavier struggles to stay calm, listening to his nonstop chatter. Lloyd keeps going. "So what now? I'll keep running until the end." As he runs, memories of his past life return. The hard work, the sleepless nights. Compared to that, this is nothing. Seeing his determination, Xavier finally agrees to teach him. At that moment, the system activates. Xavier's impression has increased by 1 point. Total RP, 29. Meanwhile, we see the Baron speaking with Newman. The Baron says, "Go easy on Lloyd. He's the heir of this estate." Newman nods, but inside, he has already made a decision. He plans to kill Lloyd, and if the Baron interferes, he'll kill both the Baron and his wife, and make it look like a suicide, then disappear into another city. 1 month later, the duel begins. Lloyd and Newman stand facing each other. The Baron watches, worried for his son. Newman smirks. "Are you ready?" Lloyd spins his shovel, rests it on his shoulder, and smiles. "I'm ready." The crowd whispers. "He's really going to fight a knight with a shovel?" Newman looks irritated. Today is the day Lloyd challenged him. To everyone else, this looks like a joke. Even the Baron feels hopeless. But Xavier says, this is no joke, because he has seen Lloyd train. Every single day, morning, basic training and running. Then, he goes to the construction site and teaches villagers how to build heating systems. And every night, he trained with the sword until he could no longer stay awake. Xavier was certain now. Master Lloyd was serious this time. Someone who works this hard can't be called a joke. The Baron steps forward and announces the start of the duel. Newman and Lloyd face each other, ready to fight. Xavier watches Lloyd, slightly confused. Something feels different. Newman moves first. Charging forward, he says, "Do you think this is some kind of game?" He attacks, but somehow, Lloyd blocks it. Both Xavier and the Baron are shocked. Newman narrows his eyes. Luck won't save you twice. He attacks again and again. Lloyd blocks it. Now Xavier is truly stunned. Lloyd's movements, they look like real combat experience. Not amateur, but trained. Newman stares at him in confusion. Lloyd raises his shovel, pointing it forward. In that moment, memories of his past life training flash through his mind. Then, he attacks and says, "A shovel is the perfect weapon. It can defend like a shield, attack like a blade, and even be used like a pogo stick." He smirks. "Come on, fight me." Xavier watches in disbelief. Is he serious? Or still joking? Even now, it's hard to tell. Newman, furious, launches another attack. But Lloyd was ready. He designed this shovel specifically for this fight, and using the basic sword skills he learned from Xavier. He counters. Newman is stunned. This was just a reckless thug. Since when did he become this strong? Lloyd activates a new ability. Tool skill synchronization. His power and the shovel's power merge together. Meanwhile, during training, Xavier's impression of Lloyd had increased. Even the Baron and Baroness began to see him differently. For the first time, they saw their son working hard. Lloyd's RP rises to 97. The system prompts. To learn a new skill, 40 RP required. Without hesitation, he acquires it. Now Newman is getting tired. Enough is enough. He decides to use his mana. This is not something he uses against ordinary people. But now, he has no choice. He gathers energy and summons his mana heart. Lloyd immediately understands. He's activated it. Newman smirks. Now the real fight begins. He launches a powerful attack. Xavier watches carefully. He knows, for someone without talent, learning mana heart takes 10 years. Even with talent, it takes at least 5. And Lloyd should have no chance of blocking this. The attack is overwhelming. Lloyd raises his shovel. Newman declares, I'll crush your head in one strike. The Baron and Baroness hold their breath in fear. But then, Lloyd stops the attack. Completely. Newman's eyes widen. Sweat forms on his face. His mana begins to drain. Lloyd looks at him and says calmly, "This was my final weapon." The skill is called mana conjuring. In the original novel, this was the technique that made Xavier the strongest. This skill allows him to absorb other people's mana into himself. Noman says to Lloyd, "Did you just take my mana?" In response, Lloyd swings his shovel and hits Noman right in the face. One of Noman's teeth flies into the air, and Lloyd strikes it again, sending it crashing down onto his head. Everyone watching is left completely shocked. The people there start saying, "Did Master Lloyd really win? How is that even possible?" Even the Baron, still stunned, declares Lloyd as the winner of the duel. Noman himself can't believe that he lost. Lloyd then says to Noman, "Did you hear that? I won the duel. So now, let's move on to round 2. He picks up his shovel again and starts beating Noman. The Baron shouts, "What are you doing?" The duel is already over. But Lloyd continues to thrash Noman without stopping. The Baron calls out to him again, and this time the guards step in and restrain Lloyd. Seeing this, Byron, the Knight of Baron, says, "Looks like he's lost his mind." Javier responds, "Honestly, I don't think so." Lloyd then says to the guards, "All right, I won't hit him anymore. Let me go." But the moment they release him, he immediately starts beating Noman again. If you observe carefully, you'll realize that Master Lloyd is deliberately striking every single part of Noman's body. And that serious look on his face, it feels like he already knew all of this beforehand. 15 days before the duel, Lord Javier is asked to teach Lloyd a certain technique. Hearing this, Javier is completely shocked because it's a technique that allows someone to absorb another person's mana. Javier asks, "How do you even know about this?" The reply comes, "This technique is still incomplete. It hasn't been fully developed yet." Lloyd says, "You talk about this in your sleep when I sing you lullabies. Maybe I'm just imagining things, but it feels like there's an iron mask on your face. There's no way I could be talking about a skill that doesn't even exist yet." Javier apologizes and refuses, because he himself hasn't mastered that skill yet. Lloyd then says, "If I teach you that skill, will you teach me?" Javier says, "If that's possible, then I'll teach you." Lloyd replies, "All right, then listen. Right now, this is your mana heart, and you're trying to merge it with the mana coming from outside. But they separate, because it's external mana. If you let that other mana flow over your own mana, it will start working like an engine. They may look different, but they will function the same." Javier then says, "It sounds possible, but Master Lloyd, how do you even know this? And what exactly is an engine?" Lloyd replies, "I'm just imagining it." His face turns stiff again, making it seem like he knows far more than he lets on. Javier then tries this method, and on his very first attempt, he forms 3 circles. His impression of Lloyd increases by 5 points. Lloyd asks Javier, "How long will it take for you to teach me the mana heart? I only want to learn how to absorb other people's mana. With everything I know now, Master Lloyd can easily defeat Sir Noman." Meanwhile, the Baron tells Lloyd to stop, saying that as a senior knight, he cannot allow this. Lloyd responds, "A senior knight? Why don't you take a look under his cloak first, and then decide whether he's really your knight or not?" There are several letters hidden there, and when the Baron reads them, he is shocked. Lloyd says, "Your sword master, Noman, was betraying you. He was selling information about the Frontera estate to others. The letters contain detailed financial information about the entire estate." Noman thinks to himself, "I hid those inside the wall, so how did he find them?" Lloyd smirks, because he already knew. The letters were found in Noman's belongings. The previous night, Lloyd had asked Pa Dong to bring them. Seeing this, the Baron is shaken. As described before, he is a kind-hearted man who cannot bring himself to order someone's execution. Lloyd says, "There's a big difference between a good leader and a kind leader. If you're going to take action against this man, I'd like to suggest something." The Baron replies, "All right, let's hear what you have to say." Lloyd says, "Let's throw a rat on his head. If it causes him pain, we'll remove him from this position or give him another chance to live as a soldier." The people around are confused, wondering what a rat could possibly do to someone like Sir Noman. Some say they should give him another chance so he can correct his mistakes. The Baron's knight even praises the idea, saying it shows mercy and will also serve as a warning to others. The Baron agrees. Very well. We'll do exactly as Lloyd suggested. Noman replies, thank you for forgiving me. Lloyd looks at him and says, forgiveness? If you forgive a traitor thinking they'll regret their actions, you're wrong. They'll just try to betray you again. In his heart, Noman thinks, you'll regret this. Baron Frontera, I won't spare you or your son. Lloyd says, it's nice to see you smiling, because this will be your last moment. Noman asks, what do you mean? Lloyd hands Padong a red bean and tosses it into the air. Looking at Noman, he says, this is the best way to forgive someone. Padong eats the red bean and suddenly grows in size. Everyone present is shocked, wondering what just happened. Lloyd starts running, and Padong jumps onto Noman. Lloyd says, and this will solve the problem permanently. A few days later, at the Frontera estate, we see Padong digging the ground. Javier asks Lloyd, what is Padong doing? Lloyd replies, he's trying to build a road. We then see that Lloyd's engineering unit is working extremely hard, and there has been a huge change in them. Lloyd says, in ancient times, there was a city called Rome, and people were crazy about its roads. We're going to build a road just like that. One that goes from the Baron's mansion all the way to the eastern mountains. Javier asks, but why a road? Lloyd replies, just wait and watch. Our estate is about to become popular. Javier then asks, where did you suddenly learn all of this? And how do you understand systems and summoning, which is high-level magic? Looking at him suspiciously, Javier says, are you really Master Lloyd? At the same time, the system warns Lloyd that someone is in him. Lloyd gets worried, because he remembers from the novel that if Javier starts suspecting that someone else has taken over his body, he would kill him. But Lloyd thinks, no problem. I've already prepared a skill for this situation. Lloyd says, I studied all of this secretly. Can I do that? He keeps using his persistence skill, making it hard for the other person to fully understand what he's saying. Javier replies, secretly? The Master Lloyd I know was always drinking. Lloyd says, you weren't watching me 24 hours a day, were you? I used to be a troublemaker. But did you ever try to find out what I was actually doing? Javier says, that may be true, but how will you explain summoning? Even mages with 20 years of experience struggle with it. Lloyd responds, then how can you control your mana so well? You didn't learn it from anyone either. You're a genius, right? Javier says, I don't consider myself a genius. Lloyd replies, if you can be a genius, then why can't I? So what if I turned out to be a genius summoner? Hearing this, Javier falls silent. Lloyd then says, I'm leaving now. If you have nothing else to say, I have work to do. He uses his persistence skill again, making it seem like everything makes sense. Lloyd tells the Baron's knight, take care of this work while I'm gone. The knight replies, don't worry, I'll handle it. Javier says, I'll come with you. It's my duty. Lloyd replies, what are you saying? I already knew you were coming with me. Javier then asks, where are we going? Lloyd says, we're going somewhere far to collect the money that's owed to us. Meanwhile, we see a man panicking inside his house. I can't believe I lost so much money. I'll definitely get it back from them. His knight says, that's how gambling works. Looks like you've lost everything. If you can't pay me, I'll leave right now. The man nervously replies, I'll pay you. There's no need to leave. The knight says, if I don't get it on time, I'm gone. The man thinks to himself that he can't keep fooling people for money anymore. Too many people are already looking for him, so he needs to hide. Just then, Lloyd kicks the door open and says, were you talking about me? The man stands up and asks, who are you? Lloyd replies, don't you recognize this face? I'm Lloyd Frontera. Hearing his name, the man gets scared. The knight asks, should I finish him? The man says, no. Let's run. The knight grabs him, and they both jump out of the window. But as soon as they land, they see that Javier is already waiting for them. Javier says to the knight, leave him and go. Just as Lloyd had predicted, they tried to escape through the window. The knight gets angry and says, do you even know how to use a sword? When Javier had lost the Baron before, he had decided to take revenge. Back then, when he fought this thief's bodyguard in the novel, it was his first time facing a black magician, and he struggled to deal with the gravity magic. That's how it was in the novel. But now, things are different. The knight attacks Javier, and Javier dodges it, but the attack spreads around him. The knight says, just as I expected, now die. Back when Javier fought him in the novel, he was just an ordinary knight. But now, with a mana heart and 3 circles, he easily overpowers the attack. Looking at it, Javier says, "So this is gravity magic?" Seeing that, he starts sweating and tries to run away. Javier says, "Do you know what happens when you deceive a noble? I'll cut off your legs, and you'll have to crawl all the way to court." He draws his sword to kill him, but Lloyd steps in and stops him. Lloyd says, "Have you gone mad? If you do that, you'll be punished in court." Hearing this, Javier is surprised that Lloyd is thinking this way. Then Lloyd tries to talk to the man and says, "There's no need to be afraid. People become selfish when it comes to their lives, and they end up doing things they shouldn't. Killing you would be too much. I won't report this to the court." The man asks, "So you want to forgive me?" Lloyd replies, "Aren't you happy about that? If you are, then why don't you return all the money?" The man says, "For that, you'll have to forgive me." Lloyd says, "No, this is what you deserve. This is life." Then Lloyd adds, "But I do have one more condition. If you agree to it, I'll forgive you." The man says, "All right, tell me." Lloyd says, "You just have to sign a simple contract." The man wonders what kind of contract it is. Lloyd says, "It's a common work contract. I'll even pay you a salary. But 80% of your salary will be taken, and you'll repay your entire debt over time." As expected, Lloyd wasn't really here to forgive him. Lloyd then says, "Do you think I'm crazy? Why would I kill someone who owes me so much money? I don't take losses like that." His plan was to make him work for him for the rest of his life. The man protests, "Why are you making me sign such an unfair contract?" Lloyd replies, "Oh, is that so? Then it seems I'll have to force you to sign it, and we can settle this in court." Crying, the man finally signs the contract. After that, they head back toward Frontera. Xavier says, "I managed to get some money from him. It should be enough to cover interest for a few months." Lloyd replies, "What are you trying to say? This money will be used to hire workers. I've already done that, but 30 soldiers aren't enough for me." A few days later, at the Frontera estate, we see a board placed near a boat with job information written on it. A large number of people are standing in line. Lloyd, confused, asks Xavier, "Don't these people hate me?" Xavier replies, "They do. But you gave an exact deadline for building the heating system, and at a low cost. You also helped the poor. That's why people trust you." Hearing this, Lloyd is surprised. Just then, a man standing in front asks Lloyd about the contract. "But before that, I want to say thank you." The man says, "My son always suffers in cold weather. But thanks to you, Master Lloyd, I don't have to worry about that anymore. You built the heating system." Hearing this, Lloyd feels a bit satisfied. Lloyd tells him, "You'll have to sign it." Then the man adds, "I have a relative in the Ricano estate. He asked if you could build a heating system there as well." Hearing this, all of Lloyd's business plans start running in his mind. He thinks, "I didn't build that heating system for free. I'll increase the price now, and add travel expenses too. But building it there will cost more." Was this the real reason he built the heating system? And what about the road leading to the mountains? Xavier asks, "Master Lloyd." Lloyd says, "Soon, these mountains will be gone." Xavier asks, "What do you mean?" Lloyd explains, "The heating system requires a lot of resources. These trees won't last long here. I already know what's going to happen next, so I'm preparing for it." He continues, "At the end of that road, there's a coal mine. We'll extract coal from there and sell it at a high price. If the heating system gets good feedback, no one will refuse it." Xavier says, "That's not right. You're being too selfish." Lloyd replies, "Do I look selfish to you? If I don't do this, do you think we can hide our debt?" Xavier agrees. "For now, it makes sense. But the Baron doesn't know you're going to the coal mine. He won't stay silent. Even other barons tried this before and failed." Lloyd says, "Yes, I know. The ground there is very weak. But I can handle it with modern-era techniques. I know about the shield method." Xavier thinks to himself, "Shield method? That's something I've never heard of." Lloyd says, "Let's go. We have a lot of work to do." As they head toward the coal mine, they start hearing strange sounds. Inside the cave, there are many glowing eyes. It turns out they belong to giant ants. We then see Lloyd using his exceptional skills and performing magic. He imagines a massive building and even creates a large apartment using his magic, but all of this is just his imagination. He wishes he had such abilities, because his basic skills take too much time. If he could, he would build everything instantly with magic. Lloyd wants to summon around 100 undead workers so he wouldn't have to pay salaries. Just then, his system window appears and says that if he doesn't like the current skill, he can draw it by hand. Seeing this, Lloyd says, "That's actually a great skill." He starts drawing again. Because of the duel with Noman, Lloyd earned 639 RP, which he used to upgrade his skills to the intermediate level. To test his abilities, he comes to the coal mine. He scans the area using his intermediate measurement skill, which allows him to see 5 minutes into the future and find a safe route. But there's still a problem. How will he dig the tunnel? If a human does it, it will take too much time and effort, and they'll get exhausted quickly. Even Padong isn't in good condition. He is already exhausted from the road construction. Even if he recovers, it's hard to make him work because of his huge size. Just as Lloyd thought, he has no other option. Now, he decides to summon a fantasy species. He still has RP left, so he begins the summoning. As soon as he starts, he hears a strange voice, and the summoning begins. A creature comes out of his summoning magic and introduces itself as Belle. Looking at Belle, Lloyd wonders if she could be useful for assassination. From the outside, she doesn't look useful at all. But then he remembers that Padong also seemed useless at first, so Belle must have some purpose too. Lloyd asks, "Can you grow bigger if you eat sunflower seeds?" Belle nods her head. Then he asks, "Do you have any special skills?" She nods again. Lloyd tells her to show her abilities, and Belle looks at him happily. A few weeks later, we see the result. Belle's ability allows her to eat soil and rocks and convert them into steel rods, which she then fires toward Xavier. Xavier uses his skills to cut the steel perfectly into shape, while the others straighten the rods to support the cave and prevent it from collapsing. Xavier thinks to himself, "A knight? Cutting steel made from a giant creature's waste?" He even questions his own reality. Lloyd tells everyone, "The work is going well. Keep going." After a while, Lloyd starts feeling dizzy because of the low oxygen inside the cave. He says it's a good thing he connected a pipe. Otherwise, everyone would have fainted. Xavier says, "Master Lloyd, I think it would be better if you went outside. All the workers are resting. You should rest too." Lloyd replies, "Idiot. I'm in charge here. It's my job to oversee the entire operation." In his past life, he had seen many leaders who only gave orders but never worked. He decides he will never become like them. Lloyd uses his scanning skill and finally detects coal. Everyone starts cheering in excitement. He thanks Belle because her help has made the work 10 times faster. Lloyd tells everyone, "Once we reach the coal, we'll break the steel supports and expand the space. It can be dangerous, so no one should take it lightly." Just then, they hear a loud noise. Lloyd is surprised because at that depth, the ground shouldn't collapse. He uses his underground scanning skill again and notices a hole that wasn't there before, and it's getting bigger. Suddenly, a giant ant attacks Lloyd. He dodges it, while Xavier draws his sword and prepares to fight. Lloyd swings his shovel and strikes the ant's head. Lloyd is shocked because he doesn't remember anything like this in the novel. He thinks, "Wait, how did I kill that ant so easily?" These ants usually live in colonies. As they look ahead, they start seeing more glowing eyes. A swarm of ants begins attacking them. Lloyd shouts for everyone to run outside, while Xavier holds the ants back. Looking at them, Lloyd starts thinking, how many are there? 200? 1,000? If they reach the Frontera estate, everything will be destroyed. Lloyd asks Xavier, "We can stop this, right?" Xavier replies, "That's impossible. We don't even have enough oxygen here." Lloyd starts thinking rapidly. The tunnel they built might collapse, but they could rebuild it later. Right now, he needs a solution. Suddenly, Xavier slaps him and says, "Get a hold of yourself. You can't panic right now." Lloyd shouts back, "I'm not panicking. I'm thinking." Xavier says, "Then think fast. I can't hold them off much longer." Lloyd starts connecting things, ants, tunnels, coal, underground. Then an idea strikes him. He grabs a burning torch and says to Xavier, "We're going inside the tunnel and attacking them." It sounds reckless, but there's a reason behind it. Both of them move forward, fighting as they head deeper inside the tunnel. Meanwhile, at the Baron's mansion, some soldiers arrive with bad news. The Baron is shocked and asks, "Where are the demonic ants?" And Lloyd? The soldier replies, "All the workers made it out safely, sir. But Sir Xavier and Master Lloyd are still inside. The knights are trying to seal the coal mine." Hearing this, The Baron quickly puts on his armor and orders everyone to move immediately. Back inside, Xavier is fighting the ants while asking Lloyd, "Is this deep enough? Or are we going further in?" Lloyd replies, "Don't talk to me right now. I'm busy." Then he adds, "At least it's good that the ants aren't coming out." But he trails off, still focused on his plan. Our situation wasn't good. Xavier had already lost all his strength. The oxygen here was very low, and there were way too many ants. We had to find him as soon as possible. He had to be somewhere here, under a layer of methane gas in the ground, because coal mines always have methane. If I could reach him, I could blow up the whole area. Then Lloyd spotted the methane layer and told Xavier, "I'm digging. Keep the ants away." He quickly started digging, but an ant appeared in front of him. Just as it was about to attack, Xavier stepped in and killed it. With a 360-degree spin, he took out the other ants too. Suddenly, a monstrous roar echoed around them. Their ears almost burst from the sound. When they looked, they realized it was the queen ant coming to attack them. Lloyd asked Xavier, "You can fight this, right?" Xavier replied, "No," Lloyd said. "At least try." Xavier hesitated. "There are some things I already know I can't do," but fighting was the only option. The queen ant attacked Xavier, and he activated his triple circle mana hat, holding the ant back. Lloyd understood that Xavier was exhausted and couldn't waste any more time. Lloyd had found the methane layer. He grabbed a torch and told Xavier to run toward the entrance. We saw them running together, and they managed to get out of the place they came from. Lloyd threw the torch into the ants' tunnel. The fire reacted with the methane gas and caused a huge blast. All the ants died, and the queen's head was severed. Xavier had been protecting Lloyd, and the blast was loud enough to be heard outside. Baron was calling Lloyd, but his hand stopped him from going in. He could have been hurt too. After the blast, Lloyd got up, his ears ringing. He saw that his plan had worked, but Xavier had been badly hurt while saving him. Lloyd apologized to him. Xavier's condition was because of him. The blast had blocked their exit, and Lloyd trembled holding the shovel. Dizziness hit him. With the cave sealed, there was no oxygen left. Using his skills, Lloyd measured how far he needed to dig. It was 5 meters. He immediately started digging. There was no other choice. He told Xavier and Belle that he would get them out for sure. Xavier watched, impressed, and Lloyd's impression score for him rose by 6 points. Then Lloyd noticed the oxygen and realized he had nothing to lose. He instructed the system to find some new skills. The system began scanning him. Lloyd only had the mana observation skill, but the system said he could combine his old skills to use a new one called the Uzra Core technique. Hearing this, Lloyd was happy because he had been practicing this since the new man duel. The system said that using the Uzra Core technique would cost him 15 RP, which he paid. He began to feel the mana in his body. For a normal person, even after hard work, mastering the Uzra Core technique would be very difficult, but he had RP and could level up. He used all his RP to increase his level and upgraded his Aaron and technique to the double circle. We saw Lloyd's entire RP get used up. He asked the system if anything else was left. What happens when the mana circles increase? The system showed him 2 skills. The first skill was Energizer, which would keep him from getting tired for 10 minutes. The second was Power T Burst, which would triple his mana for 20 seconds. Lloyd chose to use the Energizer skill and started digging with the shovel. The message window showed how much oxygen was left. He used his skill and said, "All right," focusing completely. He kept digging, saying, "Just a small hole." He didn't stop, even when his oxygen level turned red. He used his skill again and saw the final endpoint. Putting everything into it, he worked with all his strength, digging through the ground. But 3 meters before finishing, his Energizer ended. The shovel slipped from his hands, and he fell down. He activated his second skill, Power Outburst, and started digging faster. Only 30 centimeters remained, which could be dug in 20 seconds, but the oxygen ran out. Lloyd fell down. He thought, it was so small, like living the life of a noble son. In his heart, he thought, I just wanted to live a peaceful life. Then he heard some noises ahead. Looking closer, he saw Padong coming out. Seeing this, Lloyd felt relief and oxygen returned. He told himself, all right, a peaceful life is waiting for you. Meanwhile, Baron was entering the cave with some people. Baron's hand told him it was dangerous to go further. Baron said, you all can go outside, I'll go to the end. Then Baron saw something. The system said he could overcome his body's limits with these exceptional skills. The system explained that his special experiences using the Aaron core technique had greatly influenced him. We then saw Lloyd's third skill, power mode, which kept the Aaron core technique active even when he got extremely tired. Baron called Lloyd's name and approached him. Lloyd was carrying Xavier and looked exhausted. He fell with Xavier onto Baron and lost consciousness. A few days later, we see everyone talking about Lloyd's bravery. One person told another, "I thought Lloyd was unconscious, but he wasn't. His son was working in that coal mine. I saw it myself." When the monster ants appeared, he first ordered the workers to evacuate. Another person said, "It's true. Lloyd was inside the cave with Xavier. I heard he wiped out all the ants. And yes, after finishing them, he brought Xavier out with him. He's very different from the man we know." We see Xavier waiting in Lloyd's place. Lloyd opens his eyes, and Xavier immediately sees him. Lloyd sees his message in the system. Everyone in Frontera State, people were impressed by him, and his hero work had increased his RP. His RP went up to 507. He thought to himself that he had become a hero, and having 500 RP was very lucky. He started laughing. A few days later, work in the coal mine was running at full speed. All the mining masters were happy to see Lloyd. They were greeting each other, saying, "This is our master Lloyd." They praised him for all his hard work, to which Lloyd hiccuped and said, "Yes." They looked at Lloyd differently now, the one who had saved their lives. They thought he was a true leader, unlike any other noble. Lloyd felt a unique pressure from their gaze. 2 weeks had passed since they fought the monster end. Since then, work in Hill's mine was going smoothly. Lloyd was overseeing the whole coal mine. Nothing seemed wrong here, and this time, he didn't want to take risks. He said he had to identify even the smallest risks and avoid them. Xavier asked Lloyd, "Are we looking for the ants' caves again today? And can I ask you something?" Lloyd replied, "Yes, ask, but quickly, because we have limited oxygen." Xavier said, "Why do you need to do such dangerous work yourself? You could order a worker to do it." In his mind, he thought it was impossible not to care for the workers. He added, "Since you're a state official, you have to be careful." Lloyd said, "Idiot, I started this work, so the responsibility for the dangerous job is mine." Xavier was a bit confused. He realized that no one could question Lloyd, even if he spent extra money. Xavier couldn't tell if that was good or bad, but he let it go. His impression of Lloyd was about to increase, but stopped.